So Ken,
Hi.
hey, what are you working on these days?
These days, well, as a matter of fact, I am working on a wonderful project with the marvelous Margaret Atwood. So here's the genesis of this project. Oh my gosh. Last year, for Canada's 150th birthday, the sesquicentennial, isn't that a great word? The Globe and Mail, our national newspaper, commissioned a bunch of Canadian writers to write about a period in Canadian history which was of interest to them. Margaret, who is a great aficionado of Canadian history writ large, decided to write about the Canadian comics industry. Most people have no idea that we actually had a Canadian comics industry. So in 1941, the government passed something called the War Exchange Conservation Act. And what this did was embargo certain unnecessary goods from the United States, including periodicals, which included comic books. So overnight, no comic books. So 4 little companies sprang up, almost literally overnight. 1 in Vancouver, 2 in Toronto, 1 in Montreal, and started publishing comic books. And they did very well, relatively speaking. So Margaret wrote about a fictional comics company called Canoodle Comics. And it's about, the cast of characters is a young author illustrator named Alain, and he has always just wanted to, make his own stories, make comics, but he also wants to contribute somehow to the war effort. He has bad eyes and asthma and so on. So back in the day, we have to understand that back in the day, people lived during what was known as total war, and that meant that everyone everywhere was committed somehow to the war effort. So if you were in uniform, you were expected to be doing something for your community, for somehow supporting this righteous effort. So he wanted to contribute, and he had 2 older brothers who were in the service. So he thought that by creating a character, a superhero character, who would boost morale and galvanize people's enthusiasm for the war effort, and maybe sell more war bonds and so on, he would make a contribution. So anyway, 1945, VE Day, May, the war ends in Europe. The war in Europe is over, and that's right, V for victory. And everyone is just over the moon because this ghastly conflict is nearing its conclusion. So everybody's delighted except Alain, because he knows that now the war's over, the embargo will come off, American comics will flood in. By the way, the Canadian comics, they had difficulty finding paper and ink, so they were printed in black and white. They had color covers, black and white interiors. They became known as the Canadian Whites. So, and sure enough, within a year and a half of the embargo coming off, all those companies disappeared. They were all wiped out. So it was Wonder Woman and Captain America and Superman and so on. So that was the end of the comics in Canada for decades until they started coming back in the early to mid-70s. So Margaret wrote this lovely bittersweet story about this fictitious comics company on the day when they transitioned from publishing comics to getting into advertising, which is going to be the next big thing, because of course the reward for Canadians surviving the Depression and the war was conspicuous consumption. And there's going to be lots of stuff for people to buy, and they would need advertising. So he was going to go from drawing superheroes to drawing washing machines. So wow. You can imagine how he felt. So I got the nod to do the illustration because my dear friend, Dr. Gillian Grove, who's actually from Victoria, her partner is Brian G., who is the art director, and he said to Gillian, who should I get to illustrate Margaret's story? And she said, and I'm eternally grateful for this, why, Ken Stacy, of course. I thought, yes. So I did the illustration.
I mean, a Canadian comics illustrator makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not, well, actually there's a lot more, but no. So it would have just, that would have been it, and that would have been a just shoot me now moment right there, because, it was just a lovely story, and Margaret is a magnificent writer. And but the story got its hooks in me. It just, a story like that, which is so character-driven, it's like when you walk out of a theater and you're sad because I want to know more. I want to go home with them. I want to know what happens next, and I want to know what happens before. So I pitched the idea of expanding the story. And Margaret was intrigued and said, what do you have in mind? And I wrote a synopsis, and she said, yeah, let's do this. She suggested pitching it to Dark Horse Comics, to our wonderful editor, Daniel Chabon, who had been the editor on Angel Catbird, the fabulous miniseries she did with Johnny Christmas. He loved it. And so 2 issues are out now, and the third...
What's it called?
Oh, it's a secret. I'm not going to tell you. It's called... Oops. It's called War Bears.
Yay!
So the issues 1 and 2 are out now. Issue 3 will be a little late, but it's worth the wait. Honest to God,